Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Pop Cross Studios, episode 4 of Trismegistus Academy, the Resilience Combat Class. Let's hop in and see what goes on in the Mystical Academy today.
Previously on the Trismegistus Academy,
back.
Jake Tajan of the Maverick class at Tahe, the Trismegistus Academy for Heroic Enlightenment, made a deal with a student from the Ludum Academy for Fearsome Fighters,
That's right.
the LAFF, named Alsaya Lamani. She is desperate to escape Eloise Ludum's school, as the students are treated horribly and risk being killed if they can't keep up. But Jake suggested that she remain at the school so that she can help him take down Ludum from within.
They
don't have much in the way of a plan yet, but the intention is to build a roster of allies within the LAFF and at Tahe, without the faculty knowing, to help in the takedown. Alsaya returned to her school after pretending to fight with Jake at Tahe, while Ludum Academy students were visiting.
She did, of course, punch him in the stomach, but still.
Fellow Maverick class student Zenith attacked Alsaya during this fight, not knowing it was a ruse. Zenith is not happy with Headmistress Evangeline Trismegistus for making an agreement for Tahe students and Ludum students to compete in sports-like superhero competitions, as he was once forced to fight to the death in one of Eloise Ludum's combat arenas before she started her academy. Jake may not know how exactly this plan is going to come together to take down Ludum, but he hopes that it will help him achieve his ultimate goal of someday creating and leading the multiverse's greatest team of superheroes. If you're enjoying this series, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the series with a friend who might enjoy it. Now on to episode 4 of the Trismegistus Academy. As Jake watched Alsaya step through the portal to return to the LAFF, he immediately felt a surge of both anxiety and determination. He hated that she was the one putting her life on the line by returning to Ludum's dimension. If he got found out for scheming to take out Ludum under Headmistress Trismegistus's beak, he'd get little more than a gentle lecture. If Alsaya was found out,
she'd be dead.
Jake didn't even want to think about what Ludum might do to her. At least she had his multiverse jumping wristwatch to escape if she needed to, but still, it was a dangerous mission to put on someone he barely knew. Jake, Headmistress Trismegistus said, walking up before him, was I correct in assuming you did not start that physical confrontation? He nodded. Technically it was true, but there was plenty of information he was leaving out. As is to be expected from students of an academy such as Ludum's. I know you are a healer, but if you do need any healing yourself, please see Professor Dispenza and a coherence healing can be led on you. I'm fine, he said, glancing past her to see that some of the Maverick class had come to investigate the commotion. He noticed Anna and immediately wanted to go talk to her. Since he had given Alsaya his Mujwawut, she could contact Anna soon. He needed to get her in on the
Sorry, every time I hear Mujwawut, my brain just wants to make me laugh.
Plan. Zenith crossed his arms and snarled at Evangeline. If you expect them to be so violent and dangerous, why are we even bothering having anything to do with them? I don't care how great this school is, partnering with Ludum ruins it all. I bet she finds a way to destroy Tahe before the year is out, and it's gonna be all your fault, Trismegistus.
I could see that.
Before she could respond, he sprouted his golden light wings and flew off into the air, back towards the Maverick class housing. Jake felt horrible for Zenith. Jake thought this arrangement was a weird call on the headmistress's part too, but Zenith had even more reason to hate Ludum than Jake did. Jake didn't know what exactly Zenith had gone through when he was trapped in one of Eloise Ludum's death arenas, but he knew it couldn't have been good. Evangeline pressed her palms together and spun the top one.
Oh yes, I would imagine that any time spent in a death arena is good. Come on, man.
In a circle. A light wind kicked up beneath her, and she started hovering off the ground. I will go inform Counselor Hay that Zenith is in need of a compassionate voice to speak with. He should be in the clearest headspace possible before you all begin with Professor Goggins' Resilience Combat Training class next week.
Ah, perfect.
Jake looked over at Anna again. He was about to get an easy window to talk to her in private, but he couldn't ignore how distressed his fellow classmate was, and he didn't think talking to a faculty member would help. This new mission was important to Jake, but so was supporting his friends.
True.
Wait, Headmistress, let me talk to him instead. I know Counselor Hay is, a lot wiser than me or whatever, but I feel like since Zenith is mad at you, he isn't going to want to talk to anyone who works for you. Maybe he needs a classmate right now instead.
That's actually kind of
She ceased her assent and smiled warmly at him. That itself is a very wise idea, Jake. You have my blessing.
I give you props.
He nodded and quickly ran over to Anna.
Jake, are you okay? What was that all about?
Yeah, I'm good, Anna. Don't worry, but I really need to talk to you after Zenith and I talk, okay? Can I meet you back at your place soon? If you get any weird messages on your Mujwawut, just don't tell anyone about him, okay? What? I mean, okay, but I promise I'll explain after I talk to Zenith. His hands lit up in green energy and he hovered off the ground, shooting off after his distressed classmate. He soared across the beautiful, sprawling school grounds. He didn't actually know what he was going to say to Zenith, but he knew he needed help. Plus, with him being so angry about the whole LAFF situation...
Weirdly enough, this is like the third person, creature / item I've heard of that actually has the name Zenith. Of course, the first would have been the Zenith Blade from Terraria, and I can't remember what the second thing was. I think maybe it was a person.
Maybe he'd be a good person to bring in on the plan to take it down.
Oh, probably.
Jake flew above
100%.
the Maverick-class housing unit surrounding the fire pit and saw Zenith a short ways past it, angrily pacing around. Jake flew down near him and slowly walked over. Hey, Zenith, you good? He whipped his head towards Jake. Good? No, nobody should be good with a monster like Ludum having a school and bringing her little gremlins here to attack us. It was hard not to get riled up himself with Zenith being in such a hostile state, but Jake tried to stay calm. I mean, yeah, I honestly think it's really weird too, but Trismegistus did say she hopes this'll lead to us eventually shutting down that school, right? Yeah, but what does eventually actually mean? How long does Ludum get to just come parading into our school insulting us? I shouldn't have to be around her after what she did to me. In that moment, Jake thought back to a class they'd had on processing emotions. They'd been told how anger often stems from fear, insecurity, and confusion, so he asked, Are you afraid of Eloise Ludum? Yeah, of course I am! Everyone should be! Your friends have fought her, you should know the kind of horrible stuff she can make good people do to each other. Immediately after saying that, he pursed his lips and turned away. Jake processed that for a moment, then said, You know, if you did something bad when you were in her arena, nobody here would judge you for it. I mean, I know I wouldn't. You were literally forced into a life or death situation against other people. And besides, some of my friends in the Sharp Gang did pretty terrible things before turning things around and becoming heroes.
Like Oakland.
Jake's mind immediately jumped to Dresden, Oakland.
Oh my god!
Still uncomfortable having as a part of the team after having spent time wrongfully trapped in Oakland's former supervillain prison. Jake knew that Dresden was at least making considerable effort to become a better person now. Eloise had just come back into Zenith's life, and she clearly had no intention of trying to do good. Zenith marched over to a nearby tree and slumped to the ground, leaning against it. I don't like talking about it. Jake walked over and sat a few feet in front of him. You don't have to, but you can if it'll help. And it might. Jake didn't really have any idea what he was doing, but at least Zenith's anger had calmed a bit. Zenith didn't look Jake in the eyes, but said, One of Ludum's scouts came and found me in my world and knocked me out with some sort of sleeping powder. I woke up in this massive coliseum with people cheering on floating platforms far above us. My arms and legs were chained down, and a hologram of Ludum's giant, creepy face appeared in the air to tell the crowd and us down in the arena how she'd kidnapped people with hard light manifestation powers from all around the multiverse to compete.
Oh.
She also set loose a bunch of these flying, cackling monsters into the arena, and told everyone there that you could immediately be sent home, either by killing 2 other contestants, or by killing 5 of the flying monster things. She released the chains, and the 30 or something of us all had to start fighting for our lives. I tried to just fly out of the arena, but there was...
So either 15 get to go, or 100 and... No, wait. So yeah, either 15 can go home, or 150 of those flying things have to be killed.
Some kind of invisible barrier around it, so I couldn't go too far. I was scared and confused, but was at least, fine, I'll take out a bunch of the flying things. I'm a good fighter. I think most of us in there figured that was the way to go, but those monsters were no joke. I was fighting for 15 minutes just trying to kill one, and it did more damage to me than I did to it. I thought I'd lucked out when this older woman, Clarissa, with the power to manifest hard light armored upgrades to her limbs, started teaming up with me. She said I reminded her of her son, and that she wasn't going to finish off her 5th monster until she'd helped me get out.
Aww,
we worked together for a while, but it was still taking a long time. Some people were getting killed by the monsters, and so other contestants started getting desperate. Soon, we weren't just fighting the flying monsters, but other contestants attacking us to try and get out faster. We had each other's backs, but Clarissa ended up getting her leg pretty badly carved up by one of the other contestants. Eventually, there were just 4 of us left, and the other 2 ended up taking each other out, so it was down to just Clarissa and me. I'd taken out 4 monsters at that point, and Clarissa had only gotten 3. The problem was, there was only 1 left. There wasn't any way to get Clarissa out.
Oh,
So
crap.
Ludum made a change to the rules. She said if either of us took out the other, we'd be sent home. Clarissa had been so kind to me until then that I assumed we'd both just ignore Ludum. Instead, Clarissa said she was sorry, but she'd do whatever she had to get back to her kids and husband. She started attacking me. I didn't want to hurt her, so I just tried to go after the last monster. I mean, it's not like that's better. It would have left her with no way out, but I figured maybe if she was the last one in the arena, Ludum would give her some other challenge to try and get out after I was gone. Clarissa wasn't going to take that chance, though. She took out the last monster to make sure I couldn't get it, then came after me again.
Damn it.
I kept trying to just get away from her and talk her out of it, but she was gunning for me hard, and her powers were so strong, and she was such a good fighter. She kept saying she was sorry, but she had to do this, and it just made me start hating her more and more. I couldn't survive against her for long, and I knew her leg was weak from an earlier attack, so I targeted that. I made a sword and was just going for a cut, but I ended up slicing her leg right off.
Damn!
It felt horrible, but it was the
Incredible
first time I actually
skills.
got her to stop attacking me. Then she was just screaming in so much pain. I didn't want to keep going, but I didn't want to die either. Plus, I was so mad that she turned against me. With that anger pushing me, I took another swing and I finished her off.
Goes all head.
I don't know who she was or where she was from, but somewhere in the multiverse, some poor kids are never gonna get their mom back because of what Ludum made me do. Every time anyone mentions her, let alone I have to see Ludum's horrible grinning face, I remember what I did because of her. Clarissa tried to help
Yeah, okay, I think we're all in agreement. Ludum needs to die.
save me, then she was just trying to get back to her family the only way Ludum would let her. And I killed her. Tears were streaming down Zenith's face now, and his head was tucked between his knees. Jake had no idea what to say. No words came to him, so instead he just slid across the ground to sit next to Zenith and put his arm around his crying classmate.
Sometimes that's all
They
you
just
can do.
sat there for a few minutes. Jake felt bad that he wasn't saying anything encouraging. He tried to think of some inspiring monologue that a heroic team leader might give, but nothing seemed sincere enough to be helpful. Surprisingly, after Zenith's tears stopped, he said,
Sometimes it's better to say nothing and let your actions speak for themselves. Sometimes trying to speak can only make things worse.
"Thanks, man. I guess I did kind of need that." Jake didn't really feel like he'd done anything, but he replied, "No problem. Our
Anytime.
classes gotta support each other, right? And it makes more sense why you were so mad about Ludum coming here. By the way, if, there was some sort of secret plan being cooked up to take down Ludum, maybe without Headmistress Trismegistus' approval, would you want in on that?" Zenith leaned back from Jake, wiping a tear from his face. "What are you up to, Jake?" Jake explained the situation with Alsaya and how he had to tell Anna about it. He also said he was hoping other members of the Maverick class would get in on it too. He just didn't know who to turn to. Zenith replied, "I'm definitely in. Honestly, we can probably trust the whole class with this if Anna is on board. She's the only one I'm actually worried about. She gets the most nervous about what the teachers think and breaking rules and stuff." Jake nodded. "Right. I think I can get her on board. She and I are pretty close from being trapped in Baxel's prison together, then working on the Sharp Gang, and now being here. It might take a lot of convincing, but I'll do my best."
A lot of convincing, but you can do it, man. And also, badass art to start off the day. Nice.
Quick pause in the story here to read out some of the very nice 5-star reviews that have been left on Amazon for my book Vigilance,
Oh, that's
which is
cool.
now officially released in paperback, ebook, and hardcover. Philip Walters says, Vigilance main character energy was an amazing idea. When Christian first started this series on his YouTube channel, I really enjoyed the stories and the artwork that went with them. Now that it is a book, I can take my time and enjoy these stories that have some wonderful and stunning positive messages in them, as well as the great character build-up that Christian has created over and over again. We've also got from Leo Hammond, some of the best literature ever written. That's some high praise. I already watched the story on YouTube, but I'm going to buy the book anyway, just so I can read it for myself. That's how you know it's a good book. And from Lena Hosselman, my son and I love the YouTube channel Popcross Studios, and we know we are going to love the book. Can't wait for the Phobias as Demons book, hint hint. Well, there will be some demons coming in the Fear of the Demon Hunter book I'll release. Anyway, I might read some more 5-star reviews as marketing for the book later on, so if you are interested, check out the link in the description, and if you do get it, a 5-star review is super helpful. Huge thank you to everyone who's bought it, and now back into more Trismegistus Academy.
Yeah,
looks like this may be a
I'm in.
piece.
Anna replied, sitting upright on her bed. Jake and Zenith had come to her mini-home and had barely talked through the basics of the budding plan. Seriously? Just like that? Jake asked. She nodded and stood up, looking more confident than she usually did.
I don't like doing it behind the teachers' backs, but when we first came to the school, Miss Trismegistus said that she and the other teachers aren't here to tell us what to think, but how to think for ourselves. She's said that she and the other teachers have a lot of good stuff to teach us, but even they don't know everything. And we need to learn how to look at a situation and decide how to handle it the way we think is right. So, you know, in a way, we're doing exactly what they've been teaching us.
Jake's heart started to pump with excitement. He could feel his old crush for Anna coming back from that little speech she just gave.
Oh,
though
deal.
He tried to ignore that for now, knowing Jake he'd have another new crush within the hour. Jake was about to express his excitement for her being on board when a call started coming through on Anna's watch. Jake's eyes widened.
Oh, you mean the
That's
Mojo
probably
Boy?
Alcaya. But when Anna pulled it up, they saw that it wasn't coming from Jake's watch.
Oh, it's Mr. Sharp.
Oh, Benny!
Jake's face scrunched. Benny? Why's he calling? Anna answered.
Hi, Mr. Sharp. How are you doing?
Gooder than gazpacho, fans, but you got any clue why Jake's watch is showing he's in Eloise Ludum's dimension? He on some sort of real weird field trip, a secret mission or something? Because I was about to go chow down on some paninis, but, you know, if the kid got kidnapped, I could postpone my munching time and get a team together and go get him. Anna just looked past the hologram screen of Benny to Jake, saying,
There you go.
Well...
Jake slapped his own face. Benny Sharp was the person off whom their team was jokingly named, and despite his goofy, chill demeanor, was the tech genius who invented the Mudgewoods.
Oh, yeah.
It shouldn't have been a surprise that he'd
Benny is a damn genius.
have some kind of alert if one of them went to Eloise Ludum's dimension. It wouldn't have been the first.
Dude, I bet Benny is such a genius, he could actually build a full-on real Omnitrix. And I don't mean the Demonitrix, I mean a full-on Ben 10 Omnitrix.
Time a member of the Sharp Gang got taken to her world. Jake hadn't wanted to tell any of the Sharp Gang about their plan, but at least Benny of all people was not big on following rules anyway. Hey, Benny, Jake said, coming around to Anna's side of the screen. I'm fine, but I sort of gave my watch to a student of this school Eloise Ludum started so she could escape if she needs to, and so we can make a plan with her to take the school and Ludum down from the inside. But we're kind of doing it without the teachers knowing.
Yes.
Oh, I like the sound of that, kid. Our team Capitanos mentioned that Ludum had started some sort of supervillain school. Glad you kids is on the case. You need anything to help? Like a custom mech armor, or a gun, or a nice big gun? Got some new prototype bombs that make really funky noise when they explode. Those could be fun to use on Ludum.
Dubstep bomb, please tell me.
Zenith just looked at Jake and Anna confused. Jake replied, we're good for now, but we can let you know if we need anything like that. Could you not tell Sterling or the others? We kind of want to do this ourselves. Benny looked past the screen on his end and said, You hear that, Champ? Harry boy? We don't know nothing about nothing.
Oh.
Jake's heart jumped again. He could have easily guessed that Benny's partner, Dr. Champagne McGregor, was listening in on a conversation of Benny's,
Of course he is.
That's not what worried Jake. Wait, Benny, Harold the Herald is there? He heard what I just said? Right here, kiddo. A gangly man with orange skin, a floating cowboy hat over his head, and arms made of glowing pink amorphous crystals, leapt in behind Benny. Jake clenched his teeth. Harold, I swear, if you tell anything to Ludum about this... Oh, there, little bucko, I ain't working for Ludum no more. Scout's honor. I know y'all keep thinking I am, but I've changed. I'm on the mend, I'm shooting straight, and I'm just here to help. Ludum replaced me a long while ago anyhow, with some scout that I'm sure is doing a bang-up job in my place. Gave up on her coming back for me ages ago. I ain't got no hard feelings.
Wait, is that the scout from episode 1?
Towards her, but I also ain't got no allegiance to her no more neither. So I might even be willing to give you some intel to help you out. Jake didn't really buy that and was extremely uneasy now. Harold was just about the worst person who could have heard about this plan. Benny interjected. Don't worry, kid, I'll keep an eye on old Harry boy. You just let us know if you need anything and we'll keep our mouths zipped about your little mission. Good old Benny Shop ain't no snitch. Ugh. I got a weird chill when I said that. Jake thanked him and they hung up soon after, but he smacked his face down on Anna's bed and groaned. Zenith was still totally confused. Who is Harold the Herald and how does he know Ludum? Jake was still groaning, so Anna replied.
Harold used to be her main scout for taking people to her fighting arenas.
Oh.
He's been a sort of useful prisoner to the Sharp Gang. Because he worked for Ludum and jumped around the multiverse a ton scouting for her, he knows a lot of stuff about the multiverse that the Sharp Gang didn't know, that he's been happy to share. He's kind of crazy and is fine with doing terrible things, but he's also weirdly friendly to everybody. And
I guess you could say he's kind of like the DC equivalent to Mr. Mixopiddlix.
And has been a lot of help ever since our friends the Sheetnik the Squirrel and Archie the Gopher with the Ray Gun went to Ludum's dimension and captured him.
Zenith just blinked a few times, then said,
Gopher with the Ray Gun. Never gonna get over that.
You guys have a squirrel and a gopher with a gun on your team?
Yes.
The more stories I hear about that weird group you guys work for, the more I think you make half of them up on the spot. But whatever, do we have to worry about this Harold guy? Could he contact Ludum and tell her about Alcaya? Jake rolled his face over so he could speak. Benny is a doof, but he also does care about us. If he says he'll keep Harold quiet, I think we can trust him. I think. They went off to another class soon after that conversation. During that time, Anna got a message from Alcaya. Later that day, the two girls got a chance to speak through the watch, and Anna updated Jake and Zenith on it before bed. Alcaya had gotten one friend on board so far, but didn't have any leads yet on who else to bring in. Over that next week, they kept in touch with Alcaya, and it sounded like she was having a terrible time figuring out who to trust. Meanwhile, within days of the plan's original conception, the entire Maverick class had been brought up to speed, and they were all on board to support the mission. Nice. Darwin and Amelia were excited about it. Kiko was a bit uneasy, but wanted to support her friends. Niseko was indifferent, but decided to help just because, it was something to do. None of them loved doing it behind the faculty's back, but they all agreed that if they came up with a good enough plan, they'd simply present it to Evangeline Trismegistus and the Sharp Gang and request their full support. Though, another professor did cross their mind to bring it up to first. 6 days after Ludum and her students came to Tahe, Jake and the Maverick class had their first Resilience Combat class, with Strone Goggins. Jake, Anna, Zenith, Darwin, Niseko, Amelia...
are you going to try and bring him on board?
And Kiko were all gathered on a lakeside sandy beach, having all arrived 15 minutes before class started, as other students of Goggins had highly recommended. They were all chatting about the fabled most aggressive professor at Tahe. Amelia said, I heard when he blew out his knees after running for 300 kilometers non-stop, he was offered high-grade mechanical enhancements to his legs, but he refused because he didn't want anything that would make running easier, so he got the cheapest corrective knees he could. Darwin added, I heard when he wanted to see how many push-ups he could do in a row, he went for so long that he fell asleep and kept going while he slept. Kiko jumped in saying, do you guys think his name is really Testosterone Goggins, or is that just a joke the older kids say? Zenith crossed his arms. You really think his name is Testosterone Goggins? It's gotta be a joke. You think something's funny about my name? The whole class jumped as Strone ran around them and stopped. Sweat poured across his lean, muscular build. Most of them knew he'd likely been running for a few hours before classes started.
100%.
Guess you kids have heard my name is Testosterone Goggins. You'll call me Goggins. Today's your first day, so we're gonna keep this lesson nice and simple. Show of hands, who here is going to try and compete with Eloise Ludum's students in a few months? For a second, Jake worried that Goggins somehow already knew about the plan, but he raised his hand, as did the rest of his class. Good!
Yeah.
We're gonna show that devil that kids can learn to be resilient without threat of death. But it ain't gonna be easy. The kids of hers that survive got no choice but to fight till they win. You kids gotta be mentally hard enough to push yourselves to fight that far.
Ooh,
he stamped his foot on a rock next to him and it sunk into the ground. On his other side, a panel came up out of the sand, like the one in the Gleam combat simulator. Line up and scan your hand here. The students did as instructed, and as they did, he continued. The main thing you're learning today is that your mind quits way before your body does. When you hear in your head, I'm too weak, I'm too tired, I can't do it, that's just your mind tricking you into thinking your body is done. It's not. You come up against your mind saying you gotta stop, you learn to push past that again and again and again until it becomes automatic. Until you know that's just some weak voice trying to keep you from your full potential.
He's right,
When Anna scanned her hand as the last one in line, Strone pressed a button on the panel, and 7 other Gleam-simulated combatants appeared way down at the end of the beach. So far away, they were barely visible. You each got your own custom Gleam made to combat your specific abilities. Your goal is simple. Make it to the end of the beach. If you do that, class is over for you for the day, and you can leave or cheer on your fellow classmates. Your Gleam has been programmed not to hurt you, but it will do everything in its power to keep you from the end and bring you back to the start. You can quit anytime you want, but if you do, remember this. You're not quitting on me, you're not quitting on some person that needs saving. You got none of that here.
Yourself.
You quit, you're quitting on you, and you're saying that you're a slave to the weakness of your own mind. So finish, quit, or be hard enough to keep going until class is over in 4 hours. Jake was getting fired up. This was the class he'd been most excited about. This was the one where he'd really learn how to fight like a hero. The headmistress herself had already complimented Jake on his resilience, and this was literally a resilience combat class. He was going to keep getting up, shaking off every loss, and make it to the end first, to show his class what the
Though, of course, the first lesson is mental
determination of a true leader looked like. He already got a sense they were considering him a leader because of the plan they were all in on that he'd started, but he wanted to lock that opinion in right here today. The students lined up. Goggins marched partway down the beach and called out, "Stay hard, Mavericks! Go!" Jake took off flying immediately, but stayed low to the ground. He flew just over the jutting rocks that randomly stuck out across the sand before him. Zenith quickly flew on ahead and far above, having made a pair of gold light jetpacks to propel himself like a rocket. Jake should have been paying attention to his own approaching Gleam. Instead, he watched as a Gleam with a glowing cape soared up into Zenith's path and thrust its hands to the side. Around it appeared 5 black smoking spears. All of them shot directly at Zenith. 2 pierced through his light construct jetpacks and made both dissolve. He started spinning out of the air towards the beach. The Gleam made a large black hand appear beneath it. It snatched Zenith and carried him back to the start. If Zenith's Gleam could deactivate his light constructs, what would Jake's be able to do? He turned his attention ahead of him again and found he was soaring straight towards a Gleam that sort of looked like a large golden wolf lizard that he'd later learn was called a Gleam Lysavra. Was this his? If so, it didn't seem ready to face someone who could fly. He shot up into the air above it. As he did, it howled, and from its back burst a dozen orbs of light. They all flew around Jake, then burst into blinding pulses. Jake's head got dizzy, and he couldn't see anything. He could also feel that his flight powers had deactivated, and he started falling. He rubbed the glowing, healing energy from his hands in front of his eyes to clear them, but as soon as he did, he thudded into the sand.
Ow!
It was a hard hit, and his whole body ached. Before he knew what was happening, the Gleam's tail
I guess I was wrong. I guess this is only going to be a double piece. Yep.
Grown long enough to wrap around Jake's arms and torso and carry him back to the start.
Aww.
Jake shook his head off and was carried past Goggins, who was now running up and down the beach. I thought you said these things were programmed not to hurt us. The Gleams were. The ground wasn't, he replied bluntly. Jake was tossed to the sand at the start, and the Gleam vanished, then reappeared in the distance at the end of the beach again. Jake looked at some of his other classmates to see what they were facing. Darwin was the easiest to spot, as he was astride the back of a towering black-feathered dinosaur. It was a Therizinosaurus that Darwin called Voorhees, using fossilized remains from
it's named Voorhees? Oh, that's clever.
his world. Darwin could reawaken prehistoric creatures to fight with him. He had a go-to roster of 10 creatures he regularly called on, but Voorhees was the biggest, and arguably the toughest.
And
on its back, he was
favorite.
approaching the Gleam Metashima, and it sort of looked like a humanoid dinosaur, but didn't seem nearly big enough to take on Voorhees. That is, until it transformed. The Gleam quickly shifted into a gigantic snake, similar to the titan boa called Basilisk Darwin could summon. The serpent was able to wrap up Voorhees, then snatch Darwin in its mouth. It then sprang off Voorhees and quickly slithered back to the start, with the Therizinosaurus chasing it down. Soon, Anna floated past Jake, coughing and sneezing in a spinning gust of gray and gold smoke. Her Gleam was the Gleam Nephos, and it can make waves and massive areas of smoke that caused anyone who inhaled it to start coughing and sneezing. Anna could become intangible and able to phase through solid matter when she held her breath, but any time she was about to start holding her breath, the Nephos would shoot its smoke at her and make her start coughing and sneezing so she couldn't maintain one solid hold. She tried taking to the lake as she was an incredibly fast swimmer and could breathe underwater, but it seemed the Gleam Nephos' smoke could seep through the water into her gills and cause the same effect.
Damn,
Jake went a few more rounds trying to get past his Gleam Lysavra, but wasn't even getting as far as he had the first time. He tried flying higher, but its light bursts could always reach him, and it just made his fall that much worse. He tried flying straight up above the clouds, staying over the water in case he fell again.
Oh, wait, that's it. Jake, your go-to is flying, and this thing is counteracting your flying by disabling your flight. So what if you tried just running, sticking to the ground?
The blinding lights still reached him and sent him crashing into the freezing lake, only to be dragged once more back to the start. After 1 hour, nobody had gotten close to the end. Jake started to see a bunch of his classmates slowing down. Jake was feeling it too. He wanted to show off his resilience, but going back out there knowing he was going to hit the sand or water again made him just want to give up. He had slightly elevated speed while running too, but trying to move along the ground hadn't worked either. He was trying to psych himself up to go again when Darwin was brought back to the starting line, in the mouth of the Gleam Metashima, now looking like a Tyrannosaurus. Darwin just stayed flopped out on his back in the sand and lay there. "I can't do it. I can't get eaten by that thing again, man." Ignoring his own exhaustion, Jake ran over and held out his hand. "Yes, you can, Darwin." A tall blue emu-like dinosaur, Raptir, the Forus Rakos, ran back to meet Darwin at the starting line. "Your dinosaur crew isn't giving up on you, so you're not giving up on you either.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the Maverick class, and the Maverick class gets back up." Darwin rolled his eyes but raised his hand and grabbed Jake's. Jake pulled him up and patted him on the back, then flew back out onto the beach to get struck down again. It was another frustrating loss, but Jake had at least gotten a surge of energy from helping inspire Darwin to keep going. After that, every time he got dragged back to the starting line, whoever was there, Jake tried to rev them up. He pretended like he was totally amped up himself and encouraged them to get back out there. He'd help them up or start chanting their name or tell them how great of a job they were doing. His go-to line became, "The Maverick class gets back up." He must have said it 20 times over the next hour. It helped him stay motivated to keep going for a while, but after 2 hours, Jake's second wind faded, and he was getting too exhausted to try to inspire anyone else. He barely had the energy to thrash and kick as the infuriating Gleam Lysavra carried him back to the start again. He was dropped on his butt and wanted to get up, but the idea of running or flying halfway down the beach just to get dropped again made him want to pass out. He flopped back into the sand and lay there,
Come on,
panting.
Jake. You can't give up.
"I can't do it," he thought to himself. "My body won't let me." He tried sitting up, but his body felt like it was made of bricks, so he just stopped. He started thinking about giving up. He'd gone for half of the class's runtime. That wasn't bad, was it? His eyes darted to the side, and he saw Goggins standing there like a statue. Jake wanted to be mad at him, and he kind of was for putting them through this, but he knew that this was the whole point of the class. He reminded himself what Goggins had said, and he muttered it out loud to himself. "Your mind quits before your body does."
Exactly.
Then he followed it with his own line. "The Maverick class gets back up." He repeated both of those over and over as he finally forced himself to sit up. He shook the sand off and stood. "The Maverick class gets back up." He was about to run down the beach again when Anna hovered up next to him. The smoke she was carried in got close enough that he started coughing and sneezing along with her. He raised his glowing green hand to his face and activated his healing powers. Instantly, the coughing and sneezing stopped. When Anna dropped, he put his hand in front of her face to stop her coughing too.
Thanks,
there you go.
Jake.
You can do this.
I want to keep getting back up, but I can't take that coughing anymore. It feels horrible.
Hearing Anna distressed like that made Jake even more angry, but also more determined. He had a thought. What if you don't have to? He waved his glowing hand in front of her. We can help each other out.
Oh.
I keep your gleam smoke from choking us, and when my gleam attacks, you make us intangible. Its lights may still mess me up when you're phasing us, but it's worth a shot. She slightly smiled.
There you go. Now you're getting
might
it.
work, but are we allowed to work together like that?
She looked past him to Goggins. Jake turned and looked too, curiously. Strone just gave his shoulders a slight shrug. I ain't stopping you. Jake couldn't be sure, but he almost felt like he noticed the slightest hint of a grin on Strone's face. Maybe the lesson today wasn't as simple as Strone had claimed. Jake turned back to Anna. Let's do it. They started running down the beach, both more in...
Of course, most people would assume that it's a one-on-one. Like, you have to fight your own on the gleam. But the thing is, you're a team. Why would you fight alone when you have others?
Invigorated than they'd been since the start. They stayed close as the smoking gleam sent a wave of mist towards them. Jake held a hand to his mouth and one in front of Anna's. The smoke reached them and it made it hard to see, but they didn't start coughing. They kept going, and when the gleam floated closer and thrust a hand at them to strike, Anna made them both intangible, and it passed right through.
Yes!
Because of how tired she was,
Now
Anna couldn't hold her breath for long. She took a breath, still protected from coughing by Jake's healing, and he swung his fist back, smacking the gleam hard in the head and sending it spinning away from them. He didn't have outrageous super strength, but his strike was enough to be an unexpectedly hard hit to a gleam made to fight Anna. They kept running as they heard a howl through the smoke ahead. It was time to face Jake's gleam. He saw the lights coming and wasn't sure if they'd be able to just run right through. Even while intangible, they might still disorient him enough to fall over. But suddenly, Anna held her breath again, and this time they both sank into the sand. Jake couldn't see anything for a few seconds and was terrified, until they both raised back up out of it. The lights had burst and were now fading. Anna had made them miss the peak of the flashes. She took an exhausted breath, but they both kept running. Anna, that was awesome! I mean, kind of freaky, but awesome! Jake cheered.
Yes!
Thanks, but I don't think we can do that again. I barely held my breath through it, and if I breathed while we were under there... well...
Obvious is obvious.
It wouldn't have been good.
The Gleam Lysavra was coming up ahead of them and lunged right for Jake. But once again, Anna made them both intangible, and it passed right through. Both Gleams were now chasing them from behind and gaining ground fast. Jake and Anna were much closer to the end than ever before, but Anna was panting violently.
Jake, I don't think I'll be able to hold my breath very long to protect us when they catch up, and we can't outrun them.
Jake was exhausted too. He felt like his lungs were going to explode, but if they reached the end, it was all over. No more starting at the beginning. Get on my back, Anna.
Yes.
What? Are you sure?
Before she could finish asking, he stepped in front of her and knelt, so she ran right onto him. Ignoring the aching in his legs, he leapt off the ground and flew, still trying to keep his hands in front of both of their mouths, as more smoke billowed up from behind. Jake was able to go a bit faster in flight than he'd been running, but carrying Anna made it unbearably tiring. He just kept repeating in his head, "Your mind quits before your body does. You can do this, body." Jake and Anna could both see a red painted line across the sand. The end was near. A tail suddenly whipped up in front of Jake's face from behind, but thanks to a quick breath from Anna, it phased right through both their bodies. He didn't even bother looking back. Anna was keeping them safe, and he was getting them there. They were so close. But when they were nearly at the line, a dozen orbs of light came up from behind them. In seconds, Jake would be blinded and crash to the ground.
Oh, no.
They couldn't dive under the sand now, with Anna as winded as she was. There was no avoiding the lights, but Jake couldn't go any faster. They weren't going to make it. But Jake wasn't willing to take a full loss on this one. He grabbed Anna's shoulders just before the lights flared, flipped over, and hurled her forward as hard as he could. The burst blinded him, and he crashed into the sand. He was panting and started coughing through the Gleam Nephos' mist catching up to him. He was so tired he couldn't even bring himself to put his healing hand to his face. As his eyes were clearing from the flash, he felt a familiar tail wrapping around him and lifting him into the air. He was getting taken to the start again. But his head dangled back, and behind him he could see Anna, clearing her own eyes, on the other side of the red line. An exhausted smile spread across his face as he coughed and screamed to the rest of his struggling classmates. You see that, everyone? It's not impossible. The other students looked to the ending line, where Anna was now standing. Her gleam disappeared. The class's cheers may have been wary and tired, but they were cheers all the same, seeing one of the Mavericks at the end.
That's how
Jake was dropped onto his back at the start, and once again, his mind started telling him that he wasn't going to be able to get back up. But he started sitting up anyway. A hand suddenly pressed against his back and helped him up. Zenith was crouched next to him and said, "Mavericks, get back up." Jake stood, brushed himself off once again, and repeated, "Mavericks, get back up. Let's all go join Anna at the finish line."
Damn, this is good. And this would make like a great cartoon show. I know I probably already said that before, but still. Love it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 4 of this series, and check back in next time where we'll jump back to Alsaya's story. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read this week from someone named J.B. Copeland, who very simply said, "Everything you lose makes space for everything you need."
Ooh,
sometimes when we miss out on something that we think we really wanted in life, or something we enjoyed that's now gone, that's really just clearing the way for something even better to come in. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see you all next time when we flick back on. Until then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.